everyone, welcome back to my channel, to my Serendipity Subbies, and welcome into my new viewers. Today is December 17th, 2022, and I would like to bring you this day in history. Near Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, Orville and Wilbur Wright make the first successful flight in history of a self-propelled, heavier-than-air aircraft on December 17, 1903. Orville piloted the gasoline-powered propelled-driven biplane, which stayed aloft for 12 seconds and covered 120 feet on its inaugural flight. Orville and Wilbur Wright grew up in Dayton, Ohio, and developed an interest in aviation after learning of a glider flight of a German engineer, Otto Lilienthal, in the 1890s. Unlike their older brothers, Orville and Wilbur did not attend college, but they possessed extraordinary technical ability and a sophisticated approach to solving problems in mechanical design. They built printing press and in 1892 opened a bicycle sale and repair shop. Soon they were building their own bicycles, and this experience combined with the profits from their various businesses allowed them to pursue actively their dream of building the world's first airplane. After exhaustively researching other engineers' efforts to build a heavier-than-air controlled aircraft, the Wright brothers wrote the U.S. Weather Bureau inquiring about a suitable place to conduct glider tests. They settled on Kitty Hawk, an isolated village on North Carolina's Outer Banks, which offered steady winds and sand dunes from which to glide and land softly. Their first glider, tested in 1900, performed poorly, but a new design tested in 1901 was more successful. Later that year, they built a wind tunnel where they tested nearly 200 wings and airframes of different shapes and designs. The brothers' systematic experimentations paid off. They flew hundreds of successful flights, and their 1902 glider at Kills Devil Hill near Kitty Hawk. Their biplane glider featured a steering system based on a movable rudder that solved the problem of controlled flight. They were now ready for powered flight. In Dayton, they designed a 12-horsepower internal combustion engine with the assistance of machinist Charles Taylor and built a new aircraft to house it. They transported their aircraft in pieces to Kitty Hawk in the autumn of 1903, assembled it, and made a few further tests, and on December 14th, Orville made the first attempt at powered flight. The engine stalled during takeoff and the plane was damaged. They spent 3 days repairing it. Then at 10:35 a.m. on December 19th, in front of 5 witnesses, the aircraft ran down a monorail track and into the air, staying aloft for 12 seconds and flying 120 feet. The modern aviation age was born. 3 more tests were made that day, with Wilbur and Orville alternating flying the airplane. Wilbur flew the last flight, covering 852 feet in 59 seconds. During the next few years, the Wright brothers further developed their planes, but kept a low profile about their success in order to secure patents and contracts for their flying machines. By 1905, their aircraft could perform complex maneuvers and remain aloft for up to 39 minutes at a time. In 1908, they traveled to France and made their first public flights, arousing widespread public excitement. In 1909, the U.S. Army's Signal Corps purchased a specially constructed plane, and the brothers founded the Wright Company to build and market their aircraft. Wilbur Wright died of typhoid fever in 1912, and Orville lived until 1948. The historic Wright brothers aircraft of 1903 is on permanent display at the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. I would also like to bring you 10 things you may not know about the Wright brothers. Number 1. Thanks to a coin toss, Orville was the first brother airborne. The brothers tossed a coin to see who would first test the Wright flyer on the sand of Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina. Older brother Wilbur won the toss, but his first attempt on December 14, 1903 was unsuccessful and caused minor damage to the aircraft. 3 days later, Orville, in coat and tie, lay flat on his stomach on the plane's lower wings and took the controls. At 10:35 a.m., the Wright flyer moved down the guided rail with Wilbur running alongside to balance the delicate machine. For 12 seconds, the aircraft left the ground before touching down 120 feet away in the soft sands. The brothers exchanged turns at the controls 3 more times that day, and each flight covered an increasing distance, with Wilbur's final flight lasting nearly a minute and covered a distance of 852 feet. Number 2, a toy launched their flying obsession. When the brothers were younger, in 1878, their father returned home one evening with a gift that they tossed into the air. Instead of falling to the floor as they expected, the brothers recalled in a 1908 magazine article, it flew across the room till it struck the ceiling, where it fluttered a while and finally sank to the floor. The model helicopter, made of cork, bamboo, and paper and powered by a rubber bed, mesmerized the boys and sparked their passion for aviation. Number 3. Neither brother received a high school diploma. Wilbur finished 4 years of high school, but the family moved from Richmond, Indiana to Dayton, Ohio before he could receive his diploma. Orville, although intelligently curious, dropped out of high school before his senior year to launch a printing business. The Wright brothers once printed a daily newspaper together. Wilbur eventually joined Orville's printing business, and in 1889, the brothers began to publish a weekly newspaper, the West Side News. The following year, they published a short-lived daily newspaper, the Evening Item. In 1892, they switched gears and opened the Wright Cycling Company, a successful bicycle repair and sale shop that financed their flying experiments. Number 5, the brothers never married. The tight-knit brothers, born 4 years apart, were wedded to their work. Wilbur told reporters that he did not have time for both a wife and an airplane. Number 6, the Wright brothers flew together just one time. Orville and Wilbur Wright had promised their father, who feared losing both sons in an airplane accident, they would never fly together. The father made a single exception, however, on May 25, 1910, and allowed the brothers to share a 6-minute flight near Dayton, with Orville piloting and Wilbur the passenger. After landing, Orville took his 82-year-old father on his first and only flight. As Orville gained altitude, his excited father cried out, "Higher, Orville, higher!" Number 7. After the first day airborne, the 1903 Wright Flyer never flew again. The brothers made 4 flights in the Wright Flyer on December 17, 1903, and as Orville and Wilbur stood discussing their final flight, and a sudden strong gust of wind caught a hold of the aircraft and flipped it several times. The aircraft sustained such heavy damage to its rib, motor, and chain guide that it was beyond repair. The Wright Flyer was crated back to Dayton and never flew again. Orville was involved in the first fatal aviation accident. After their success in 1903, the Wright brothers continued their aircraft development. They marketed their 2-passenger Wright military flyer to the U.S. Army, which required a demonstration. On September 17, 1909, Orville took to the air for a demonstration flight at Fort Myers, Virginia. The Army Signal Corps Lieutenant Thomas Selfridge as passenger. Just a few moments into the flight, the propeller suddenly disengaged and the aircraft spiraled out of control and smashed into the ground at full speed. Rescuers pulled the unconscious Selfridge from the wreckage, and the lieutenant died hours later. Orville was hospitalized for 6 weeks after suffering a broken leg, 4 broken ribs, and a back injury that impaired him for the rest of his life. Number 9. For decades, Orville refused to donate the Wright Flyer to the Smithsonian Institution. The 1903 Wright Flyer is one of the most popular exhibits at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, but for decades Orville refused to donate the aircraft to the National Institution. In 1914, the Smithsonian attempted to restore the reputation of its formerly secretary, Samuel Langley, whose experiments with his Langley aerodrome ended in failure 9 days before the Wright brothers first left the ground. By altering the aircraft and then concluding that it's the first machine capable of manned flight, a furious Orville Wright loaned the Wright Flyer overseas to London Science Museum in 1925, believing it would be the only way of correcting the history of the flying machine, which by false and misleading statements has been perverted by the Smithsonian Institution. After the Smithsonian admitted in 1940s to misrepresenting the Langley aerodrome, Orville agreed to donate the aircraft to the institution. It finally arrived at the Smithsonian in 1948, nearly a year after Orville's death. Number 10. Neil Armstrong carried a piece of the Wright Flyer with him to the moon. When other aeronautical pioneer from Ohio, Neil Armstrong became the first man to step foot on the moon in 1969. Inside his spacesuit pocket was a piece of muslin fabric from the left wing of the original 1909 Wright Flyer, along with a piece of wood from the aircraft's left propeller. I want to thank you for watching today, and I want you to stay safe and stay blessed. And remember to smile, because I love you, but more importantly, God loves you. And remember, I go live at 5 p.m. Central, that's 6 p.m. Eastern. All right, everybody, I'll see you in my next video. Bye now.